Hello and welcome to episode 3, Sensory Experiences. You might have joined me for my previous episode where I spoke about neurodivergence and creating routines that work for you. So in today's episode, talking about sensory experiences. So first of all, I'll go over the 3 senses. There will be smell, sound, and touch. Now, how do the senses play a role and how do they come up in neurodivergent people? So with neurodivergence, you tend to have a stronger sensory perception to many things in the world. For example, with smells, these can come up in very different ways. Sometimes you could be walking down the street and you'll be walking past a restaurant or a vendor and all those smells kind of come to you and it could be very overwhelming. There may be one in particular smell that you maybe don't like, or one that kind of like sets off maybe a chain reaction. I think one that stands out for me is really strong aftershave. If I smell really strong aftershave or perfume, that can really, it just becomes a real overwhelming experience. I've got quite a sharp nose, so I'll always pick up if someone's wearing perfume. So our second one will be touch. Now, with touch, it really varies again. Some people may be indifferent to the feelings on textures, for example, of fruit. So take the rind of the skin. I mean, for example, my husband, he absolutely hates the feel of the skin of oranges, for example, and will ask me to peel the fruit for him. For me, personally, I'm okay with the textures of the fruit, but one that really shows up for me is the texture of meat, especially raw meat, for example, like chicken. That always grosses me out. It's just like cold, wet. I hate that feeling. Also, I really don't like the texture of worms. So anything slippery and cold and wet, it just sets me off. I really don't like that. Yeah, so those are some textures that can play a part. And our final sensory will be sound. Now, sound can, of course, play up in many different situations and contexts. It could be, for neurodivergent people, it could be really loud sounds. For example, fireworks, popping of balloons. Maybe you're in a huge group of people and there's just so much different noise and sensory experiences going on that becomes really overwhelming. I know that when I was younger, I used to get really jumpy and sensitive to certain noises. So if someone would suddenly clap or shout or something behind me, then I would always jump back. And that was always quite funny in the schoolyard. And at home as well when you're playing games. So yeah, our next thing with our sensory experience is emotion or feeling. Now, this one, it won't show up in all neurodivergent people, but it kind of falls into the bracket of more like maybe autistic or gifted neurodivergent. So when you're emotionally or energetically sensitive to the environment around you, you may be able to pick up on energy that other people can't. For example, I know that when they rolled out the 5G, a lot of people were very sensitive to frequencies around that time. There was a lot of information put up online about that. For me, I would say energetically I am very, very sensitive. And for example, if I'm in a room and someone I don't know walks in, before I see them, I will be able to feel and sense the other person. Not just like, I can hear them, but literally I can kind of tune in with my own energy and I can pick up people's subtle energies, and then I will take a step back from that energy and say, this energy is not mine, the energy is not part of my system, and I will come back into my own being. So we have sensitivity to bright light or chaotic environments, texture aversions, which I spoke about. Sensory overload can lead to shutdown, freeze, or anxiety. Sensory seeking, so for example, that could be movement or fidgeting. So for example, whilst I'm recording this video, I am fidgeting and playing with a rubber band. I would say that's probably my favourite thing to keep me grounded. It's a bit like a pacifier, I guess. Some people may tap the leg, maybe clicking the pen. That's quite a common one. Or just playing maybe with a label or something you do unconsciously, usually. And then you're looking down like, oh yeah, I'm fidgeting again, or I'm playing with this or that. But yeah, it's all about basically regulation of the system. Okay, so I think that's pretty much covered our common sensory experiences. Next, I'll be going on to the tips for managing sensory experiences. I think the first and foremost thing that is really important to do is to identify which senses are most sensitive for you, be it sound, light, texture, or emotional energy. You can use grounding practices to stay centered, breathing, movement, and weight training. Breathing is so important, not just for neurodivergent people, but for neurotypical people as well. Breathing helps you to stay present and grounded. Movement, and of course weight training, so that's great with the resistant training as well. Create predictable sensory environments when possible. So whenever you need that time to kind of like step back, come out of a harsh environment, always making sure that you've got that kind of like safe space at home to come back to, it could be one room. For example, if you've got a big family, just creating one safe room where you have the sensory experience that you like can really help you to regulate. Reduce exposure to unexpected triggers when needed. Of course, that's not always possible, but on the other hand, you can always create into your routines times when you will go out, socialize, or when you'll go into environments that can be quite chaotic. So at least you predicting when that over sensory experience is going to happen. Use protective tools if helpful, so earplugs, noise cancelling headphones. For example, when you're on the commute to work, everyone's rushing, then that's when you can really get those earplugs and noise cancelling headphones, because first thing in the morning, that's really overstimulating. Learn energetic or emotional boundaries, so you no longer absorb the energy around you. That one for me has been a big lesson and breakthrough for me, learning about energetics and emotional boundaries. I've done a lot of work with this, especially with my meditation and my yoga. And this is another part that I would love to be able to teach to others. Building a sense of inner stability so you can influence the atmosphere instead of being overwhelmed by it. And again, this is another topic that I'm going to dive deep on in our next series after I finish this one. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me today for our sensory experiences. I hope you've learned a little bit more about what it means to be neurodivergent and how the senses can play a role in this. I truly believe that the senses for neurodivergence can be a gift. We just have to tap in to how do we make living with the senses, how do we turn that into a gift instead of a hindrance, something that keeps you held back, to something that can help you to really create a positive impact in this world and leave a lasting positive impression. Our next episode, I will be talking about social interaction. So this is going to be a real biggie, and there'll be lots of things to come up with that too. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please give me a like, comment, and share if you've enjoyed it. And of course, if there's anything that you wish to share with me, I would absolutely love to hear from you. So please write that in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me.